Alright, welcome back. So now let's build our bow. So like I said, I'm going to use, this is the leftover, most people use this to make a small flower. It's only about 9 inches in diameter, but we're just using this as a really good base to build our bow on. Really sturdy, y'all. It's not going to biodegrade or anything like that. Now to actually build our bow, I'm going to enlist tinsel wire to do the building because it is really easy to grab and get a hold of. But to finish it off, we're going to use a zip tie to really secure it down. So I cut off a really good length of the tinsel wire so I would be able to get a hold of it. And I'm going in a hole so they're up and down. Left to right won't work. We want to go up and down because we're going to lay our stuff across the ties. And I'm going to pull them even. And we're going to start by laying our tail down first. So I'm going to cut off the extra tinsel tie for 2 reasons. One, I don't want to get confused with what I'm securing the base and we just don't need it anymore. So I'm going to cut that loose and cut it off. So now we're going to secure our tail down first. Now before we really get started on the bow, I want to go ahead and put my zip tie in. And I already know it's probably going to take 2 of them, but I want to go ahead and put it in because it'll be easier to get in now as opposed to later when we have all the, I see that doesn't wrap tight, so that doesn't, it not long enough. So if you can get a longer zip tie, of course that would be better. But for this, we'll just use 2. Now I don't want to cut that off yet because I might have to pull that tighter later on. So here's our stack from our rag bow. We're going to flip this upside down because we're going to build from the bottom up. So I have some picks over here, and we're just going to add some different greenery and florals to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set these in here, and I'm going to lay my, and I'm going to do 2 on each side so we can pull them apart a little bit later on, but we're just stacking right now. Now I don't want them going out too far past my bow, but I want them going out just enough so that we can see the foliage and whatnot, because these are pretty big leaves. Now if you don't have very good hand strength, here's what I recommend you do. And this will also make sure that they don't slide and whatnot, is we're going to take a little bit of hot glue, not much, and we're going to put it directly in the center there, and we're going to tie these in. Now we don't want the long pieces stabbing anybody, so while that's cooling, just going to cut those off. now we're going to layer in our first part of the rag bow. Now, because we need to secure this, when we're done, and I'm going to turn this a little bit so I can secure it better and get my tails out of the way. We're not going to fluff as we go just yet. So as I go down, I'm going to add a different green reed this time. Oh, we're going to add that one to the tail. Hold on. We're going to add a little bit of grass. And it doesn't have to be that much. So once again, I'm going to lay these in here. And I'm doing 2 for each side. And I'm going to grab my next layer of the bow, make sure that they are out far enough. That we're going to be able to see them. We're going to grab some hot glue. Notice I'm only twisting once on the tinsel tie, and the reason I'm only twisting once is because I don't want there to be a lot of bulk. To my bow. Because that'll make it harder to zip tie down if there is a lot of bulk in our ties. Now I'm going to pull my tails down because it's just easier to do it now and get them out of the way as opposed to later. And that one won't pull down, so we're just going to go ahead and cut it out of the way. So now that we're getting closer to the top, I have some sunflowers that we can add. So Sometimes you got to piece these little dudes together to make a complete branch. That's not a very good branch, so I'm going to move 2 heads instead of 1. And basically, I don't know if you can see, but I'm using a lot of just leftover supplies to do this. So I'm making sure that I had a total of 6 heads. So I'm going to kind of stagger these out. So let me grab my bow again and lay it down. And I'm going to do this on top this time just to make it a little bit easier because I'm staggering them out in size. Not in size, but in the length, excuse me. Because I want them sticking out past the bow. Not too far past, but just enough. So now that I have, set that aside again. Really shoot some hot glue on all of that. And tie it down. And once again, we're going to grab our bow, and this one's got tails on it. And at this point, you're going to notice that your bow is starting to get pretty bulky. I saw it go off a little bit. Once again, I'm going to pull my tails down because it's easier to do it now than later. And it is stacked, y'all, probably about 5 inches tall. So that's why it was pretty important, and it'll thin down once we really start to zip tie it in. So that's one of the reasons, because it's already so tall, that we're really wanting to keep the bulk of it out. So for the top layer, we're going to add a couple of sunflowers. I grabbed the wrong ones. These look a little too springy. One second, y'all. Let me get more fall-looking ones. Now what I'm gonna do is it's got several different sizes, so I want that for the center, so I'm gonna pick 2 more smaller ones. To go side to side. I don't know what happened. I guess I got a little bit of colorblind there for a second when I was picking my florals. Now, we're not really concerned at this moment about which way the head's face and whatnot, because the florals are wired. Now these are sticking out past the bows, so I know that they're long enough. And for this layer to break up to flowers from the last row, is I'm going to incorporate just a little bit more grass as well. So just like the other layers, we're going to really shoot the hot glue in there. And tie that in. And then finish this off with our top layer. So now we're ready to zip tie. And this is really going to secure everything down. So I'm having to push just a little bit. I was trying not to get another section of zip tie, but that's exactly what we're going to have to do. And it doesn't need to be that long. We just need a little bit of an extension here. Alright, so I'm going to cut that off, and then I'm going to hold this down. And because we really don't want this to be as thick as possible, you might have to like give it a little weight into this. I'm going to hang this off the edge. Now, if you have one of those tools to tighten zip ties, that would be a good time to use it. If you have pliers, you might need to use those. I've got some needle nose pliers I'm going to use to help me get a good grip on this, to really tighten this up. and then cut the excess off. And now we're done with our tinsel wire. So now we're ready to start fluffing our bow out. The first thing I'm going to do is bring all my tails around. Now before I really start fluffing, I like to rip my tails to give it a little bit of personality. That way I'm not having to mess my bow up to rip my tails. Now you don't have to rip your tails. It is up to you if that's what you want to do. Now because the bow is so large, we're not going to have to rip that many. Or at least in my opinion for this. So now we're going to start fluffing it out from the top. And really start pulling our loops apart. And we're going to pull our flowers apart as we go as well. I'm going to pull these down to the bottom because of course we want some greenery on the bottom. Now the reason I didn't hot glue the pieces in is because the rag bow itself needs a bit of a support system because it is fabric. So we're using our florals to also support our bow in the long run. So I'm just trying to pull everything apart and kind of Mod Podge it out, just like when you make a wreath kind of thing. And then we're going to use the big flower head to kind of mask everything that we did. And we're just going to glue it straight to the center. Now we are going to hot glue in some little pieces to the top, and we're going to make sure we bury them deep down in there. Into the bow so that they'll stay. So I'm lifting up quite a bit of the bow to put this one in. Do the same thing with the grass. I think I'm going to cut these down just a little bit. Those are just a little bit long for me. I don't want them this far out past the bow. So I'm just going to cut the tall leaf off. There we go. There's just a couple. And then we can take these and we'll just layer them in. To the very top of the bow to give it dimension. So the last thing that I want to do is I wanted to make sure that my greenery kind of fell into the tail itself. I'm going to add a couple more flowers real quick, just because I want them peeking out the top. one more small. Sunflower at the top. Okay, so now I wanted some of the greenery to go down into the tail. So the greenery that I picked out to go into the tail is pretty long. So I want to put it in first, and then we're going to incorporate some small pieces into the bow itself to tie it all together. So I'm making sure that I take some of the longer pieces. And we're gonna do like we did before, we're gonna go up underneath the bow to put these heavy amount of hot glue. So I'm kind of going to the top so that these will be seen. We don't need that much. So I'm just going to do a few pieces. And then on this piece, we'll just rip these heads off and incorporate a few of them up into the bow itself. And I'm gonna put one right here to kind of tone down the leaves. And then I'll put one more toward the top so it can be seen better. So I know this took a little bit of time, y'all, but it's a different new product and I'm really loving the results from it. You can take your ribbon and dovetail it if you want to, your tails however you want to. It's just and I just really think that for a Christmas rag bow, incorporating all your greeneries and whatnot, it would be absolutely just gorgeous overall to do this for Christmas especially, and to incorporate items in for a tree topper. So I hope y'all really enjoyed this. I think this is a super fun project. It's, you know, like I said, a little time consuming, but it definitely gets you out of the humdrum of just making a wreath, and it lets you expand your creativity. Thank y'all so much for joining me. Bye, y'all.